Graham did not bother with pleasantries. He slid a thick legal packet across the table toward me, the pages stiff and deliberate, as if he had rehearsed the motion. "Evelyn," he said, "these are ready for your signature. The story you are about to hear is a work of fiction created by the Her Chains Channel team, based on real-life situations to convey lessons about family, emotions, and human values. All characters and events are illustrative. My daughter, Sienna, sat beside him. Her hands were clasped too tightly, her smile stretched thin. "Mom, this is what we talked about," she said. Though we had never spoken of anything like this, the Penthouse makes more sense under our name now. It gives Mila the stability she deserves. I stared at both of them, trying to understand how we had arrived at this moment. "You want me to sign my home over to your family?" I said slowly. "Because it makes more sense to you. It is not a request," Graham replied. His tone was steady in a way that made my chest tighten. "If you refuse, we will take the formal route. The filings are ready." So that was it. I had raised Sienna on my own since she was a small girl, worked double shifts, saved every dollar, and somehow, this was the moment she chose to show me who she had become. I felt the betrayal before I fully registered the threat. This was always the plan. "Mom," Sienna whispered, "you said one day the Penthouse would be mine." Her voice trembled, but mine did not. "I said one day I would make sure you were safe," I answered, "not that I would sign away my home while I am still living in it." Graham tapped the packet with a single finger. "We are not leaving without an answer." I looked at the papers, at the signatures already prepared, at my daughter's face tight with expectation. Not love. Something in me settled, something old and protective. They thought I would fold because they believed I had nothing to stand on. But I had 30 years of records, receipts, and truth, and I remembered exactly where I kept them. I spent 4 decades at Seattle Grace, walking hallways that never slept. The work changed me. It carved out patience, discipline, and a kind of steady strength I did not always feel. When my husband, Michael, died from cancer, I went back to the hospital only 3 days after his funeral. I had a child to raise, and grief did not pay bills. Sienna was 12 then. She stood in the doorway one morning and watched me tie my shoes for another double shift. "You're always leaving," she said. It was not anger yet, just loneliness that she did not know how to name. "I am trying to keep us afloat," I told her. I meant it with my whole heart, but she heard something else. As the years passed, Sienna grew into a girl who carried that wound in silence. Whenever I missed a school event, whenever I hugged her 5 seconds too late, her eyes sharpened a little. One night, after her 18th birthday, she said softly, "One day, you'll make this up to me." I thought she meant the present I could not afford. Now I am not so sure. I worked overtime every chance I had, saved every spare dollar, and after 30 years of grinding through exhaustion, I bought the Penthouse in South Lake Union. My name on the closing papers felt like oxygen. I gave Sienna a tour the day I signed. She told me, "It is nice, but you do not need all this space." There was a tone I could not quite read. She moved out soon after, renting places far beyond her income, switching jobs as quickly as she switched hobbies. When I tried to talk to her about budgeting, she would say, "You worked your whole life. I do not plan to live like that." I met Graham during one of those conversations. He stepped into the room with a polished smile, but his eyes moved like he was assessing inventory. I felt a chill I could not explain, a quiet warning that settled under my ribs. Years later, that feeling would return when he slid those papers toward me. The invitation came in a cheerful group message from Sienna family dinner tonight. "Just us. Mila is excited." There was no reason to refuse. But the moment I walked through their door, Something inside me tightened. Everyone was too polite. Graham pulled out my chair with exaggerated warmth. Sienna kept smoothing the tablecloth as if preparing for an audience. Mila ran up to hug me, and for a moment, the tension softened. But even she seemed unusually quiet, glancing at her mother before speaking. Sienna served the food, then folded her hands. "Mom, we have been thinking a lot about Mila's future." Graham nodded along, his smile locked in place. I took a breath. "What is going on?" "We want stability for her," Sienna said. "A real home. A foundation. And your penthouse provides that. It is the smartest option for all of us." I stared at her, unsure I had heard correctly. "You are asking me to give you my home." "It is not giving," Graham said. "It is reallocating. You have more space than you need, and we have a child." His voice lowered. "If you say no, then we take the legal route." The room shifted. Even the air felt thinner. "You are threatening me," I whispered. Sienna leaned forward. "Mom, you promised me this place someday. You said it when I was 20. I remember it. I said I wanted you to feel secure." I answered. "Not that I would sign over my home while I am alive." Graham tapped his fork lightly, the metal clicking like a countdown. "We are trying to resolve this privately, but we will move forward if we must." The confidence in his tone rattled me. This was not an impulsive dinner conversation. They had practiced this. They had a script. Sienna's voice broke. "You owe us this chance." My throat closed around a dozen memories I suddenly questioned. Had they been rewriting them all along? The letter arrived 2 days after that dinner, tucked inside a crisp envelope with a law firm's name embossed across the top. I opened it thinking it might be some mistake. Maybe a notice about property taxes. Instead, I found language so sharp it felt like it cut my hands. According to the letter, I had made a verbal promise years ago to transfer my penthouse to Sienna as part of an informal family trust agreement. They stated it plainly, as if it were an uncontested fact. They even referenced a supposed conversation from a holiday I barely remembered. I read it twice, then a third time, searching for something that proved it was a misunderstanding. My phone buzzed. A notification, then several more. Graham had posted online, writing that I was refusing to support my own daughter and granddaughter, claiming I had turned my back on family in their time of need. The thread was already filled with comments, distant cousins, acquaintances, people who had never called me once in their lives. Every one of them took his side. Sienna stayed silent. She did not correct the story. She let it grow. I sat down at the kitchen counter, holding the letter like it might explain itself. For one weak moment, I wondered if I had truly said something years ago that she misunderstood. Some sentence tossed out during grief or exhaustion. Had I created this expectation without realizing it? My phone chimed again. A new message. From a number I recognized only vaguely. It was Graham's mother. "You should help them. They are drowning." There it was, the crack in the story. Not a plea for fairness, not a claim about promises, a warning wrapped in concern. I folded the letter slowly. Whatever this was, it went deeper than family sentiment or old conversations. Much deeper. I opened the old metal filing cabinet I had kept since my early nursing days. 4 decades at Seattle. Grace had trained me to document everything: medication logs, shift reports, supply discrepancies. That habit followed me home. I saved every mortgage statement, every tax notice, every insurance renewal, every receipt tied to the penthouse. Order was how I survived chaos. I pulled out the first folder and set it on the table. Down payment records sat right on top. Printed clearly the entire amount wired from my personal savings. Every cent of it mine. I kept turning pages, finding 36 months of mortgage payments drafted from the same account. No contribution from Sienna, no shared ownership, no trace of an agreement of any kind. My hands shook. Not from fear, but from the insult of being told my own memory was unreliable. A smaller file slipped free and fell open. It held old joint account statements from when Sienna was in college. I almost put it aside, then I saw the withdrawals. Not large ones, but small and consistent. $40 here, $60 there. Then a sudden $400 transfer I never authorized. I remembered confronting her about it once, and she laughed it off, saying it must have been a software glitch. I let it go. Seeing it now, the pattern was unmistakable. She had been taking from me long before this. I exhaled slowly and opened my laptop. If Graham's mother said they were drowning, it meant there was more underneath. I requested a credit report tied to Sienna's name. When it loaded, I felt my jaw tighten. She carried several lines of unsecured debt, thousands upon thousands of dollars spread across credit cards and short-term loans. None of them matched her income. None of them had explanations. The picture sharpened. This was not about a home for Mila. This was about survival. And they had decided my life's work was their solution. I had Sienna's credit report open on my screen, but it was not enough. Debt on her part explained desperation. Yes, but the shape of this felt larger, heavier, like someone else was steering. So I typed in Graham's full name. Then the business he claimed to run. What appeared made my chest tighten. He carried several maxed-out credit lines, each one in the tens of thousands. A failed business loan. Another loan he had attempted to refinance and been denied. A notice of overdue payments tied to something labeled consulting equipment, a vague term usually used to mask a sinking venture. The numbers did not tell the whole story, but the pattern was unmistakable. He was in trouble long before he came after me. I kept clicking, following linked accounts, when a new detail froze me. One of the outstanding debts, nearly $8,000, was in Sienna's name, but clearly tied to Graham's business address. She had never mentioned it. I doubted she even knew. I whispered the words aloud. He used her credit. Without telling her. There it was, the truth they had not said at dinner. The Penthouse was not about giving Mila stability. It was a life raft. My home was their escape route. I picked up the phone and called Lucinda Hale, my neighbor and the closest thing I had to a confidant. She answered on the second ring. Evelyn, you sound shaken. What happened? I explained everything: the letter, the accusations, the debts hidden under Graham's name and Sienna's. Lucinda let out a quiet breath. You need someone who understands property law. This is not a family disagreement anymore. I do not want to escalate it, I said, though even I could hear the doubt in my voice. You are not escalating, she replied. They already have. Did you know Graham lost a civil case 5 years ago? Financial misconduct. He settled before it reached trial. But it is on his record. The room felt colder. This was not neglect or misunderstanding. This was a pattern. Lucinda's tone softened. You have to protect yourself. Evelyn, I met Rhea Solberg on a Tuesday morning after Lucinda insisted I stop trying to handle this alone. Rhea was younger than I expected, sharply dressed, and spoke with a calm precision that made people listen without her needing to raise her voice. She read through the letter, the printed accusations, and the online posts without interruption. When she finished, she looked at me steadily. You are being coerced, targeted, and misrepresented. We respond immediately. Her confidence gave me something I did not realize I had been missing. What do we do first? A declaratory judgment, she said. We have the documents to show you are the sole owner of the Penthouse. No one can dispute that. Next, a cease and desist letter to stop the harassment. And we prepare a counterclaim in case they escalate further. I blinked. A counterclaim. They fabricated a trust agreement, Evelyn, and someone drafted statements pretending you gave verbal consent. She opened one of the documents Sienna had submitted. Look at this signature. I leaned closer, My name curved across the page, but something was wrong. The loops were too wide. The slant unfamiliar. That is not mine. I whispered, "No, it is not," Ria said. "This is a textbook example of a falsified signature. If we push this, Graham will face consequences, and so will anyone who knowingly supported the fabrication." My stomach tightened. Even after everything, I had hoped Sienna had stayed on the edges of this, too lost or confused to understand the damage. But this was participation. This was intent. Ria softened her tone. "You are still her mother. I know this is painful, but they crossed a line the moment they put this in writing." I nodded slowly. "Then we fight." She gathered the documents, slid them into a structured stack, and said, "I will schedule a settlement conference. They will have to face the truth in the room with us." Her certainty steadied me. For the first time since the dinner, I felt the ground beneath my feet again. The settlement room was smaller than I expected, just a polished table and enough chairs for the 6 of us. Ria sat beside me, her posture relaxed but unmovable, across from us. Sienna and Graham whispered to each other until their attorney entered. Neither of them looked at me. Ria began without ceremony. "We will review the ownership records first." She slid a folder forward. The down payment entirely from Evelyn's personal savings. Mortgage payments, every one drafted solely from her account. No contributions, no joint ownership, no trust agreement. Graham gave a short laugh. "You cannot prove a verbal promise did not happen." "That is true," Ria replied. "But we can prove your claim relies on fabricated documents." She opened another page. This signature was not written by Evelyn, and we have an expert prepared to testify to that. Their attorney frowned. "Graham, did you submit this?" Before he could answer, Ria continued, "There is more. Since you raised the issue of family need, we reviewed the associated financial context." She placed a printed sheet on the table. "These debts, tied to your business, include a loan in Sienna's name. Records suggest she did not authorize it." Sienna's head jerked up. "What loan?" Graham's jaw tightened. "It was a short-term thing. You would not understand." She pressed a hand to her mouth as she scanned the page. "This is nearly $8,000. You said it was taken care of." "It would have been," he muttered, "if your mother had cooperated." His attorney leaned forward sharply. "Mr. Carter, stop talking." Ria folded her hands. "The court will not look kindly on forged agreements or deceptive financial practices." A knock at the door interrupted her. Judge Albright stepped in just as she had warned she might. She glanced over the documents, her expression cooling. "If any falsified material reaches my courtroom, the consequences will be significant. I suggest you resolve this before it escalates further." Silence wrapped the room. Sienna's shoulders slumped. Graham looked cornered, exposed. The story they built was unraveling thread by thread. The hearing was brief, far briefer than I expected for something that had taken so much space in my life. Judge Albright reviewed the filings, the signatures, the financial exhibits, and the declarations Ria prepared. When she spoke, her voice carried no hesitation. "Evelyn Marlowe is the sole legal owner of the South Lake Union property. There is no evidence supporting the existence of any family trust agreement, verbal or otherwise." Graham shifted in his seat, muttering something to his attorney. The judge continued. "Furthermore, the documents submitted by Mr. Carter contain irregularities that require further investigation." She turned her gaze on him. "You will be contacted regarding a formal inquiry into potential financial misconduct." His attorney exhaled sharply. Graham looked stunned, as if the world had tilted under him. Judge Albright was not finished. "Regarding the secondary claims, Mrs. Sienna Marlowe Carter will be required to reimburse funds previously withdrawn from joint accounts without authorization. The total will be assessed and submitted to this court. Sienna gasped. Her hand shot out toward the bench. Your Honor, I did not know those withdrawals were your responsibility. The judge said simply, you benefited from them, and you will repay them. Sienna's eyes filled, not with remorse but with panic. Mom, please, she whispered. I cannot, this is too much. I held her gaze. There was no anger left, only a quiet, exhausted clarity she had taken from me before ever asking. She had built her house on assumptions I never made and obligations I never gave. Graham slammed his palm on the table. This is outrageous. I run a business. You did, his attorney interrupted. Your license will be suspended pending the investigation, and your investors have already withdrawn after seeing the filings. Graham turned to Sienna, his voice a sharp whisper. This is your mother's fault. She ruined everything. Rhea stood. No, you ruined everything when you tried to take what was never yours. The judge adjourned the hearing with a single strike of her gavel. Sienna broke first, covering her face with her hands. Shoulders shaking, Graham stormed out without looking back. The room emptied around us until only the echo of their choices remained. I did not speak. I did not need to. The truth had done the speaking for me. The investigation into Graham moved faster than anyone expected. Within 3 weeks, he received a formal notice his business license was suspended. Pending criminal review of forged documents and misrepresentation, he called me once, leaving a voicemail thick with anger. You destroyed my career, he said. But we both knew he had done that long before he ever walked into my life. Sienna's world cracked next. The court finalized the repayment order, and the total stunned her. She tried to negotiate, tried to plead, but the number remained. Without Graham's income, their finances collapsed. Their landlord issued a notice, and Sienna sent me a short message. We are leaving Seattle for now. I do not know what else to do. I read it quietly, then set the phone down. I felt no triumph, only the weight of the truth finally settling. A week later, I met with a financial advisor and established a restricted trust fund for Mila. $20,000 to start money meant only for her education and future, untouched by any adult hands. When I signed the documents, I felt something ease inside me. I could love my granddaughter without enabling the people who had tried to undo my life. That afternoon, an envelope appeared at my door. Inside was a small drawing in crayon, a tall building with a little figure waving from a balcony. Under it, in careful handwriting, were 2 words, Grandma's home. Not theirs, not ours, mine. I invited Lucinda and a few close friends for dinner that weekend. No ceremony, no speeches, just conversation that flowed easily. Laughter that did not strain to exist. Lucinda lifted her glass. To standing your ground, she said. And to remembering you deserve the life you built. I nodded. To surviving it. I added, and learning from it. Life had taught me something I had ignored for too long. Protecting what you earned is not selfish. It is an act of honoring the years you struggled, the nights you pushed through exhaustion, the sacrifices no one else saw. Love does not mean surrendering the foundation beneath your feet. Sometimes love means holding the line, even when it breaks someone else's illusion. After everyone left, I stood alone in the quiet of my home. No fear, no guilt, just the steady rhythm of a life I fought to keep. If you've ever lived through something like this, I hope you share your story below. And if this one meant something to you, tap like, leave a comment, or subscribe for more stories that hit close to the heart.